Next time you get them, get one for me.
Man cannot live on hamburgers.
No, absolutely
Here is mine.
I do it the lazy way, I just put it all together on the casserole.
not. That's what I do. How else do you do it? Oh, you don't even wrap them. I do. I make the pigs in a blanket. Yes, I do.
It looks like it's right on the property line, so we'll try to.
Oh, that's what my mother-in-law used to call it. Yeah, they put it. There was no Polish way out. You're fine, excuse you.
I got it.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. The McHenry County Zoning Board of Appeals, the purpose for our hearing today is application 2024-014. This is a request for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. The address of the property is 3916 Ames Road, Crystal Lake, Illinois. 2 PIN numbers are involved in this petition. They are 14-23-101-002 and 14-14-300-002. The applicant is TPE Illinois IL MH637, LLC. The property consists of approximately 70.935 acres and is located on the north side of Ames Road, approximately 3,300 feet east of the intersection of South Illinois Route 31 and Ames Road in Nunda Township, Illinois. At this time, I would like members of the Zoning Board of Appeals to introduce themselves and the township in which they reside, starting on my right.
Bill Kurdick, Grafton Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
Vicki Gardner, Nunda Township.
And Linnea Kustra, Alden Township.
Charlie Eldridge, Richmond Township.
Mary Donner, Greenwood Township.
And I can find forgive me. Yeah, I'm looking for the whole.
There you go. In the plastic.
No, I took everything out of the plastic, unfortunately. And then I was looking at everything else. Sorry about this. There we go. This petition has been reviewed and the following items have been received prior to today's scheduled hearing. The publisher's certificate of publication from a newspaper is dated March 15, 2024, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The affidavit of posting was signed and the date posted was March 20th, 2024. The affidavit of mailing was signed and the date mailed was March 13, 2024, thereby meeting ordinance requirements. A survey has been checked against the petition, legal notice, and publication in the newspaper, and all three match. Filing fees have been paid. The endangered species consultation was received for this petition. The McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has been received. For further information, please refer to NRI number 24-021-4577. For those of you who haven't been to a hearing before, the way this hearing works is the petitioner will present their case to the board. They will be asked questions by the board, also by staff. Then at that time, if there's any member of the public who would like to ask a question, they will be able to come up and they'll have 3 minutes to be able to ask questions based on the testimony. And then after that time, then the staff will give their report. And then at the end of that, if there's any member of the public who would like to give a statement, you'll have 3 minutes to do that as well. So any member of the public who feels they would like to speak, as well as anyone from the petitioner side that will be speaking today, will have to swear you in. So I would ask you to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So we'll go ahead and turn it over to the petitioner then to present your case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the of the board. My name is Kyle Berry. I'm an attorney with McGuire Woods LLP. I'm based primarily out of Springfield, Illinois. And I'm here today representing the applicant, which has submitted an application, or a conditional use application for seeking approval of 4.99 megawatt solar project that would occupy approximately 38 acres of the two host parcels that Madam Chair already described. This afternoon, I intend to present two witnesses. Gloria Foxman from the developer and the applicant TPE, as well as Amy Henry, who's with a consulting firm called Kimley Horn. And they're going to take us through a PowerPoint presentation. So with that, I'll turn things over to Gloria to kick us off.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm Gloria Foxman. I work with Turning Point Energy, and we are behind the project entity TPE IL MH637. So I'm here just to, you guys already know a lot about solar, so I'll just walk you through the location and the benefits to McHenry County.
Can you speak up so any member of the public can hear you as well? I know you tend to be
I appreciate it.
soft-spoken.
Nope, I'm trying. Thank you.
And if you could tell everybody who your employer is, what your position is, and what your connection with the project is.
Absolutely. My employer is Turning Point Energy, so we're an independent energy company. My position is development manager, so I effectively project manage this project, and that's my relationship to the project. If you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. So this is going into who Turning Point is. We try to have a collaborative approach as much as possible, which is something you'll see here today as we have submitted a revised site plan from what you saw in the initial application. We have hard copies here, incorporating feedback from a neighbor and also from the McHenry County Conservation District to preserve more of the trees in the northwest corner. So Amy with Kimley Horn will get into a lot of the details about that. But in the revised site plan, and we also have a revised noise study because the equipment had moved a little bit. We appreciate your flexibility to look at these new plans as we try to make a project that works as well as possible for all the neighbors. So that's what this slide is about. We try to work with authorities, with neighbors, with conservation districts. We try to design harmonious projects by using native pollinator-friendly plants in the landscape underneath the panels and in the buffer. And then where our projects are successful, we like to give back to the community through nonprofit initiatives, things like libraries, schools. And so we have our target community investment amount across Illinois. If you go to the next slide, we have some examples of partners that we've worked with for community investment impacts. So if you go to the next slide. What is community solar? Everyone on this board knows what it is. For the other people in the room, it just allows people who don't want to put solar panels on their roofs to still benefit from solar energy. Typically, they can subscribe at a discount from the standard ComEd rate. We believe it'll be about 5 to 10%, but that's all through ComEd, so that's just our projection. And it just opens up solar energy to a lot more people, renters, people who just don't want it in their roof. Or maybe their roof or their site is not ideal for solar energy. Skip to the next slide, thank you. So you'll see here, I'm just trying to situate the project in the area. You can see it's surrounded on 3 sides by agricultural land, and that there are residential neighbors on the southern side. We tried to, in our revised site plan, which you see there, we've tried to make it more palatable to the neighbors by observing the McHenry County setback that was in the previous ordinance before the state siding bill. So 300 feet from a residential wall to a panel. So that's a revision from the site plan that you originally saw. We've also moved the access road west to try to move it away from the neighbor to the south. So that is going to be in conjunction with the road authority of Prairie Grove, and ComEd has a little bit of input on that, but this is what we're arguing for. We think it makes sense.
And that change for the road was pursuant to a request from the neighbor, correct?
Correct. Which we love to hear. We love to hear requests from neighbors. We want to try to make this the best project we possibly can. So I've just noted where it is in the surrounding area and that it will be screened with a fence and vegetative buffer and planted with native pollinator-friendly species.
And Amy's going to
Amy, yes, Amy's going to get into much more of the details in her presentation, which will be right after mine, just a few minutes. But in terms of benefits to the community, it can create local jobs during the construction phase, electricity savings for residents, tax revenue. I have that in here, but I know last time there was a question about the tax increase. So we have a figure that we're given by the state, the legislation which enabled these kind of projects. We project that over the lifetime of the solar project, it would increase tax revenue by over $1 million. And then there's the environmental benefits, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, increased grid resiliency through the improvements we have to make to the grid to interconnect with ComEd, and then improved soil health and reduced erosion through creating a pollinator habitat. Next slide, please.
And you said a figure from that's provided by the state. What you're referring to is the state's state statutory standardized assessed value for property tax purposes for solar projects, correct?
That's correct. Thank you so much, Kyle. So I have a little more information about our planning plan. We have a study that we submitted with our application that demonstrates that native pollinator-friendly plants like the ones we propose to use can produce results similar to a conservation reserve program where it can reduce soil erosion and protect the agricultural use that can come after this project. Next slide, please. We also submitted a glare study where we showed zero glare to the roads near the project and all of the residences near the project.
And, sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead, but on the right, there's a figure. Can you explain to us what those numbers are and the little red bubbles?
Absolutely. So they correspond to the table. So the blue lines are Route 1 and Route 2, which are the roads near the project. And then OP stands for observation point. So they've placed an observation point at every nearby residence. So that's 16 are listed there. It's hard to see with that, the way they're all jumbled up, but there was a more detailed, longer report in the application.
And again, the results of the glare study show that 0 minutes of glare on any of those neighboring parcels that are, or homes that are depicted on the exhibit, correct?
And that is enabled because these are going to be panels that turn with the sun, single axis trackers. So if there was a moment where there might be glare, we can program in that the panels will be tilted just so. That's part of why we do this study, is to make sure, even if you think, well, there's got to be glare, that we have a little bit of control over making sure it doesn't go to the residences or the road. So how would a solar farm be as a neighbor? Our goal is to make them, I think you have to click again, quiet and screen. Thank you so much. So unlike some other forms of development, once construction is done, there's no long-term traffic other than periodic maintenance for the plants, which everybody wants. No water or sewer usage. We comply with Illinois noise standards. And there's landscape screening that will have many benefits that we already discussed. And then we also submitted a refreshed property value impact study. We do have Andrew Lines here from Cone Resnick. If anyone has any specific questions about this study, he was part of preparing it and he can answer those questions. But we have discussed this study before. It was prepared, in addition to Andrew, by Patricia Elmagar, who has wonderful qualifications and was appointed the chairperson of the board that qualifies appraisers in the state of Illinois. This study used multiple methods. It reviewed academic studies, it reviewed peer-authored studies by other appraisers, and then it also performed original studies over 17 states. I have a table here that I can distribute if anybody wants it, which just shows, it was in that long report, but it shows the studies that were selected for this report that are the 10 most relevant to this project. And then it also considered interviews with county and township assessors. And using all those methods, it concludes that the study and the data indicate that solar facilities do not have a negative impact on adjacent property values. And that is the end of my slide. I will pass it over to Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you reintroduce yourself, please?
Yes. Amy Henry, I work with Kimley Horn, who is the civil consulting firm on the project. So we prepared the site plan, some of the environmental reporting, the noise analysis, landscape plan. And my role on the project team is the lead of that civil team. So the site plan that you're seeing up on the screen is the same as the new one that Kyle just handed out to you. And I can talk through in more specifics of the changes that were made. I'll just walk through some of the main points of the site plan, and then I'll talk through what some of the changes were that we made that you previously saw in the staff report. So the total parcel area is 71 acres. The preliminary development area is about 34 acres, and the preliminary solar area is about 26 acres. The solar site will be located on what is currently agricultural land with residential properties to the south and agricultural fields to the north, east, and west. The access road to the site will be on the south edge of the project connecting to Ames Road. There will be a security fence that will be enclosing the entire south portion of the facility and the north portion of the facility, as well as landscape screening in the areas shown in green. The setbacks are a 33-foot right-of-way setback, 50-foot property line setback, and as stated by Gloria, we are using a 300-foot residential setback from non-participating residential buildings. There are 2 equipment pads on the site plan. There's one towards the south end near the access road, and that's where the inverters will be located. And then there is an equipment pad in the northern portion towards the north array, but there will not be any inverters on that pad, so you won't see that as part of the noise analysis that we did, because there's not anticipated to be any noise from any of the equipment that would be on that pad. So the equipment pad in the south, the one that we did do a noise analysis on, is about 175 feet from the right-of-way and about 370 feet from the nearest non-participating house, which is the home that's directly south adjacent on the other side of Ames Road. The site was designed to minimize impacts to the remnant oak forest and the wetlands that are in the center of the site. So you can see, based on the aerial, the western side of the parcel there, where there's the wooded area, we're avoiding those areas and avoiding impacts to those trees. And that is one of the primary differences from the previous site plan that you saw. In that northwest corner, we've pulled back panels off of that remnant oak woodland area and are now proposing to provide a tree survey in that area to make sure that we're avoiding any impacts to old growth oak trees in that area. The landowner does believe that a lot of that area that is shown as shaded in our site plan is scrub, and so there's an opportunity there to remove some of the vegetation in that area for panels. But as I stated, the intent is to avoid impacts to any old growth oak trees that would be in that area.
And Amy, could you also, I know that you just described the difference between the new site plan and the old one on the northern part. Mm-hmm. Can you just give us a quick rundown of the difference on the southern part, in particular relating to the new entrance road location and the equipment pad?
Yep. So the only other changes then that you'll see are, as Kyle stated, we've bumped out the array, the fence, and the screening to be a little bit further west, closer to the property, that western property line. And that was a request from the landowner. They did want to maximize that area. And then the road has moved from this southeast corner of the parcel over closer to the southwest corner of the array down there. And that was based on a direct request from the landowner, the residential landowner that's across the road, across from Ames Road.
And part of the move, when the road was moved in the site plan, the equipment pad was also moved to the west and slightly north, is that right?
It was moved to the west, maybe just a bit north, but mostly it did shift west to move with that access road, yes. And so that is the reason you're getting a revised noise memo today is to correspond to that equipment pad moving and we wanted to rerun that model to just show that we're still in compliance with Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations. Next slide. The corresponding landscape plan will show 2 different types of seed mixes. There will be an array area seed mix and seed mix for along the fence line and edges. Those will be native pollinators. The landscape buffer that is shown screening the southern edges and then the western edges to screen from the nearby residential properties is going to be a mix of evergreen and deciduous shrubs. Sorry, you can keep it here, but I was just going to say the project does intend to provide maintenance throughout the life of the project. All right, so this is the same slide that we talked through previously. I know the board is aware, but just for anyone else, so for a solar facility like this, water does run off underneath the panels, and then the area underneath and between the panels will be planted with native pollinator meadow in place of row crop. Meadow has long roots to help decompact the soils and has a higher infiltration rate that will absorb more water than existing conditions and reduce the overall stormwater runoff. As the panels rotate during a rainfall event, the runoff will not be in a stagnant location, and therefore running between the arrays is not a concern. A drain tile study will be completed prior to final engineering. And then to further some of these points, the American Society of Civil Engineers issued an abstract titled Hydrologic Response of Solar Farms. The report analyzed the effects of solar panels over vegetated ground cover and concluded solar panels over a grassy field does not have much of an effect on the volume of runoff, the peak discharge, nor the time to peak. And finally, to mitigate any erosion concerns during construction, an erosion control plan and stormwater pollution prevention plan will be prepared as part of final engineering. Fine. And then this slide is just to demonstrate that native grasses, flowering plants do and can grow quite well in between and beneath stormwater or beneath the solar panels. And does well to reestablish valuable land cover to help improve water quality, prevent soil erosion, and reduce loss of habitat. And so a decommission plan was also prepared as part of the submittal. At the end of project life, the project will be decommissioned and comply with the requirements of the AIMA, the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement, and McHenry County Solar Ordinance. McHenry County decommission requirements include the removal of all solar panels, electrical equipment, poles, piles, foundations, and conduits above and below ground. Access roads, fencing, ground cover, and landscaping may remain if it is shown to be consistent with the future use of the property and at the request of the landowner. Next slide. And so the graphic shown on the slide does match the updated memo that was handed out. Kimley-Horn prepared a noise study, which shows that the project will comply with the Illinois Pollution Control Board noise limits, as shown on the screen. And in addition, the inverters will only produce noise during the day. They do not produce any noise during the night. As part of the project, siting and development and environmental constraint study was completed. The study included a detailed review of many areas, including the 100-year floodplain, wetlands, soils, public waterways, topography, and cultural resources and endangered species. Next slide. Kimley-Horn conducted a level 1 desktop wetland delineation and reviewed FEMA floodplain maps as part of the Wetlands and Waterways review. The study area is not located in a 100-year floodplain per the FEMA firm that was reviewed. And the wetland delineation identified potential agricultural wetlands in the central and southeast portions of the site and potential non-agricultural wetlands and a drainage feature in the central portion of the site. So if you recall from the site plan, that's the area that is being avoided by the north and south arrays on either side. The project was designed to avoid impacts to the potentially non-agricultural wetlands in the center of the site. The project does propose to cross the drainage feature in the center of the site. The crossing will be designed to minimize impacts to that feature. Next slide. Thanks. The project consulted with IDNR by submitting a request through their EcoCat online tool to review any state-listed species. IDNR identified 6 state-listed species and 2 Illinois natural inventory sites in the vicinity of our site, but concluded adverse effects to protected resources is unlikely and consultation is closed. The project also reviewed U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service online IPAC tool and identified potential suitable habitat for federally listed species. However, the project will be designed to avoid impacts to these federally listed species. And finally, the project consulted with the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office in January 2024 and received a response from SHPO in February that a Phase 1 archaeological survey will be required to identify any archaeological resources within the project area. This survey will be conducted prior to construction.
And Madam Chair, that concludes our presentation. Of course, I stand ready to answer any questions from the board and members of the public. In terms of housekeeping, to the extent required, I'd like to ask at this time for permission to admit the PowerPoint presentation and the amended site plan and the amended noise plan into evidence.
It will be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll start with questions on my left, Ms. Donner.
I have no questions at this time.
Mr. Aldridge.
Really just one. Have you determined finally that there are no waters to the United States on the parcel?
Without a level 2 wetland delineation, they are potentially federally regulated wetlands and that waterway feature that runs through. So
Will you be doing the level 2?
yes.
Okay, so the level 2 will be done before construction.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, that was my only question.
Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. Is this property part of a larger property, or is this one property on its own? You're leasing it, correct?
Leasing it, correct.
Yes.
And the 2 parcels we identified, there's that little parcel there with the house on it, and that's southwest of the 2 we're talking about. And those 3 are together, and it's not part of a larger property outside of those 3 parcels.
Okay. How many inverters are you planning on installing for this project?
I don't have a number. I don't think that that's been determined yet, but will be determined during final engineering.
We typically would not know at this point in engineering.
Okay, but all of them are going to be at the southern end?
Correct.
Southwest, did you say?
Right near
Okay.
the access road.
Okay, thank you. And if you can't avoid the area with the oaks in it, how many panels will you lose from that area? Let's say you can't really weed out the bad stuff and there's still too many large oaks standing.
Thank you for asking this question, because we had really good dialogue with Ed Collins, I think is his last name, from the McHenry Conservation District. So we are committing to not removing any old growth oak trees. We're happy to commit to that voluntarily.
Right.
So if there's old growth oak trees there and they are in that northwest corner that was identified as part of that remnant forest, and then actually we were just thinking and assuming they are not dead. If they're already dead or ailing, then we would probably remove them. But if they're healthy, old growth oak trees in that northwest corner, we are committing that we will not remove them.
Okay. So that area is actually included right now in your array, is that correct?
A portion of it is, and that portion was identified by the owners as the area where they believe there are not old growth oak trees. So we said, sure, we'll include that in our array, when we put that little note there saying non-old growth oak trees to be removed.
The worst case scenario for you, it does have old growth oak trees in it, and you can't use that area, how many would you lose, then how many panels would you lose?
I don't know the exact number of panels because until final engineering, we don't actually even know what panels we're using. So I could guess at it, but I do know that our team has vetted the financial impact of the project and we can move forward even if we don't use that area.
Okay, so it's not gonna really affect your progress in any way?
I mean, of course, we would like to have the best solar project we can have, but
Yes.
we can move forward without it.
Without it, you can
Yes.
go ahead. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Schnabel.
Yeah, just a couple things. From one design to the other, I assume on paper they're equivalent kilowatt output.
Correct, they just, it's the same AC, if I remember, no, DC, sorry, I can't remember which one it is, but it's effectively the same, it's just the compression ratio or whatever. And
Right, that leads to my next question. Perhaps it's my eyes. These appear to be at scale.
Mhm.
When I look at the drawings, it looks to me like the original design, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you know the answer to this. Looks like the original design had the racking arrays further apart.
That's right.
And it looks like they're closer together now. And if that's true, could you give me an idea of what those two dimensions were and now are?
I don't recall, because we didn't have it on our site plans of what the ground cover ratio was previously or currently. I would say that, they could go up to 50% ground cover ratio, which would be the area of the panels and then versus the area between the panels. But I can't say for certain and without, again, final engineering, knowing exactly what that ratio is going to be. But I do know that is what they played with when they were looking at the financials and the output of the project.
So my suspicion was not out of line. That's good to know. Because it looks like they're about twice as close together now. Lastly, there seems to be a great preference to use agricultural style perimeter fencing. I'm just curious, are you planning on that, or are you going to try to do cyclone or some other material?
We are planning on agricultural fencing, correct?
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Koenig.
I don't have any questions at this time.
I have a few questions. Did either of you go out and visit this site and look at the area of the oak woodlands?
I've been to the site. I haven't been back there to the oak woodlands. No, I have not.
And the civil
And I
engineer?
have not, no.
And so if you find mature oaks and then there's some scrub around it, how would you be able to put your panels up without impacting those old growth oak trees? I mean, the whole perimeter, all the area around there can kill oak trees, depending on how you're working in that area. You could have a huge negative impact on any oak trees in that area, even if it's not all oak trees. I mean, how do you think you could manage that if there's oak trees, if there's remnant oak trees in there?
That's a great question. It would certainly, if we're going to preserve them, we want them to be healthy and thrive, right? We don't want to preserve them and then have them die. We work with landscape architect Drew Kimley Horn. So once we have that tree survey and we see what we're working with and where the oak trees are located, we would have to manage the setback from the trees so that we wouldn't kill the trees. I mean, there's no logically and just for what's morally right, we wouldn't want to negatively impact them. We wouldn't want to preserve them just to negatively impact them. So I think it would be the same as we do with any extant vegetation that we keep on site. It's very much in our best interest, but also just what's correct to do to preserve any vegetation that's on site, but especially something that's historically significant.
I think the key point that you made is that you'll be working with Kimley Horn's landscape architects who are experts on this type of vegetation, right?
Well, and then
Chris Wilson being one of them.
Also, our contact at the Conservation District, I believe that he's going to be recommending the tree survey professionals. So, the more people we can get who are familiar with these specific trees, the better.
But if there was a condition that you not impact any area where there's mature oaks you would still be able to do the project.
That's correct.
Also, would you be comfortable with the condition, Ms. Beverly is not here today, but on the Lucas Road, as far as the pollinator species, accepting the same condition that we had in the Lucas Road petition, you would be comfortable with that same condition?
Yes, I would.
As far as the seed mix?
In terms of the condition about the oaks, though, I just want to be very clear because I'm trying to commit to what I'm supposed to commit to. We are specifically committing to not removing any old growth oak trees from that northwest corner of the property where the remnant oak forest is, what I think it was called in the NRI, was identified.
Okay, also, I just want to point out an error in your introduction, your project overview from Turning Point Energy. It lists Lucas Road as the parcel. And,
Sorry.
Yeah, so I think you might want to correct that.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
Let me see if there was anything else. I guess my other questions are for staff. That you had several comments regarding their submittal, Kim, in February. Were all those addressed and to your satisfaction when looking at this email from February 2nd?
Yes, all of that has been addressed.
Okay. Do you have any questions for the petitioner?
I think I just have a couple of questions here. I know you mentioned that the panels are going to be closer together in order to accommodate what you're losing in the northwest corner. Does the system size get reduced at all from that, or is that just all going to be compensated for, so it'll still be the 4.99?
It'll still be 4.
Still be, okay. And then I just had a question about the vegetative screening on the southeast corner of the property. The vegetation along the east property line that's existing there, is that dense vegetation that you intend to use as the required screening along the east property line there? Or could you just describe what that vegetation is? Coming from the southeast corner of the array going north, back from the road. Correct. There's not going to be any alteration or removal of any of the vegetation, that tree line that's along the east edge of the property there. Okay, and you believe that it's dense enough to accommodate the requirement for the vegetative screening on that side? I think that the intent was to screen from residential properties. Do you think that there's a resident that's could see from that? So it's not the residents that I'm concerned about, it's the within 500 feet of a right-of-way. Typically, we see that vegetative buffer go back 500 feet from the right-of-way unless there's existing vegetation that meets that requirement. So if there...
We can add more vegetation.
Okay, if there is sufficient vegetation there and you believe that that's sufficient, we can certainly look at that during permitting, but I just wanted to point that out that if there isn't, it might need to be added at that location.
I'm happy to just have that be a condition where we would rather have more vegetation on the line. So.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sure.
No problem.
That's all I had.
Okay, Kim, do we have anything from the Conservation District?
I have not received it.
Okay, I didn't see anything in the letter. All I see is what's in the NRI as far as the woodlands.
Correct, yeah, that's all I saw.
All right, does any member of the public want to ask questions? Okay, I'll start my 3-minute timer. So I'll ask you to give your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Wesley Chaya, 3317 Worth Trail in Prairie Grove. I know there's maintenance to the panels, and so they have to be cleaned twice a year. Being wetlands, how do you guys plan to contain any runoff from cleaning these panels twice a year? Some sort of material is going to be needed, chemical, to clean these solar panels.
I am not aware that there are any chemicals that would be used to clean.
So then rain would be sufficient.
Yes, there's not going to need to be any.
According to what was listed, it states maintenance twice a year for cleaning all the panels because they won't be sufficiently full power.
The maintenance that would happen would be on any equipment that's malfunctioning, any that sort of maintenance. And then it also includes mowing of the grass as it's getting too tall.
Correct, but if you look at the website on there, the proposal, it says that maintenance will be done twice a year where all panels will be cleaned, not just when necessary. So that's, the wetlands will be affected by whatever is used. And who's determining mature oak trees as well? What's 3-inch, 6-inch, 12-inch?
May I?
Sure.
So we're specifically trying to preserve the old growth oak trees. So we would be relying on the wisdom of the tree surveyor or an arborist to determine that. We're not going to do this. Regarding maintenance, my understanding is that we follow industry best practices. If we do use a chemical, I'm not aware of it, but I would be happy to follow up with you about that. I could look into that to see if that is indeed the case. We really don't want to impact that wetland. So what I can say is that our maintenance would be aligned with industry best practices, and that I'm happy to follow up with you about that.
And they'll have to get some sort of a truck or something back there because there's no water like feasible, so that'll be another thing. And then I know they're talking about 7-foot fencing, but some of the panels are listed that they can be up to 30 feet. According to the website that was on there, that some panels can reach up to 30 feet. And there's 7-foot fencing, so that's a quite height discrepancy between.
If there was something that said that they could be as high as 30 feet, that would not even comply with the ordinance. I think that that's not what we've proposed. If there was an error that proposed that, I'm very sorry, but I believe that it's either 15 or 20 feet at max tilt, which would just be like 1 point of the panel. So to my knowledge, there would not be any.
Even at that point, if it's 20 foot, the fence is 7 foot. It's still, if you're driving by, you're still gonna see it.
The intent of the fence is I believe, safety, not as much visual screening. It does, of course, screen the racking, but.
The 7 feet is a minimum requirement by the National Electric Code.
But it's not, well, it does provide like a screening sort of side effect for part of the array. It's not intended to cover all points of the array at all times of day.
And I know they're doing the greenery that they want to do. But is that going to be, what, 18-inch?
Your time is up, sir.
Well, I haven't been speaking for 3 minutes. I can't.
Your time is up,
Your
sir.
time, you get 3 minutes to ask questions.
Even with their response, I thought I literally had.
No, it's a 3-minute time.
Okay.
Anyone else have
Yeah,
questions?
Can you, is there going to be a comment period at the end, or this is?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes, then you have 3 minutes for comments at the end.
Okay, am I fine where I'm at, or can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Todd Bright, and I live at 4063 Ames. I'm the house just to the south. So a couple of questions I have is, and I've asked you this before, and thank you, Gloria, for all you have done in adjusting the plans on that, and Kimley Horn, they're a very good firm. But I guess what I would ask is, with the power, there's 6 new power poles. Is there any way that those can go underground? I know the ordinance states they're supposed to be underground to the maximum extent possible. Can they go underground?
So my response to you has been that we're going to look into it because we have to work with ComEd there. And right now we're still trying to wait to hear back from Prairie Grove if we can even move the driveway. So we sort of have to make sure we can move the driveway where we've proposed it because they're the road authority, so they could tell us.
But there's an existing driveway.
I know, I agree with you, I'm hearing you. And then we have to, once we have that, we have to go to ComEd and say, hey, we want to scooch the POI in this direction, is that okay with you? And then ask about it being underground.
All right, so I guess to be determined.
Exactly.
I know ComEd's answer. ComEd will take the cheapest course. That's why they'll stay overhead. And with the, you had mentioned, I think it was Amy had mentioned about the intended, or the maintenance. It's intended to maintain the pollinators. I mean, I plant a pollinator garden myself. I know it takes a lot to maintain those. What does it mean? What's meant by intended? I think I know is there a guarantee? The current property owner who's there now, that's what his business is. He will. God forbid he leaves. That's kind of my fear. But so because I don't want to run out of time, and then I don't want to run out of time.
If you want to ask all your questions
So,
and
and then
when your time is up, then she can answer them.
And then one other, I guess the other question I have, the people that did the property evaluation, would you rather look at 100 acres of a cornfield for 100 acres of solar panels. Now, granted, it's not my property, and I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to it, because I think this gentleman, Kurt brought up, it could be gravel, it's their property, they can do what they want. And I don't find solar panels being that bad, and I appreciate all the efforts you're doing to try to screen them. I'm just want to make sure it's maintained, and it's going to impact your property value, and maybe one of these gentlemen did it, but I appreciate you trying to minimize it to the extent possible. So, with that, that's all my questions.
Okay, you want to answer other questions?
I'll talk about landscape plan, and then we'll let the expert talk about property values. We do have, stipulations that we need to maintain the property, the landscape around, and the plants underneath the array, but we're also agreeing to the pollinator scorecards, which is an extra step. So that was sort of alluded to, but when we were here previously for a different project, we agreed to abide by the Illinois pollinator scorecard, which just has some higher level of care for the pollinator plants. So when we say it's intended to preserve the plants, of course, it's in our best interest to have a robust landscape buffer that functions and works as designed, and that's what we're trying to set up here with the plan.
It's more in my best interest.
It's in both of our best interests. It's it aligns there. Then again, as you probably know very well, we can only do the best we can with plans, and then we can go back and fix it if something goes wrong. So that's what this plan is intended to set up.
I'll respond to the property value question. I'm Andrew Lyons. I'm an MAI and a CRE. I recognize a couple of you. I've testified here a few times over the last 7 years. We continue to examine solar facilities across the United States. We look at both areas that have very affordable home values to ones that are well over $1 million.
Again, tell me your background.
Sure. I'm a state certified general real estate appraiser. I have been since 2007. I have 20 years plus experience. I have an MAI designation, which means I'm a full member of the Appraisal Institute. And this year I was accepted in the Counselors of Real Estate. Patricia McGarr, who was mentioned earlier, is my mentor, and she is retired as of 2 months ago.
And you're with Cohn Resnick?
I'm with Cohn Resnick, which is the firm that provided the property value impact study to Turning Point Energy.
Thank you for that. So then you can go ahead.
Great, sorry about that. So we continue to identify lots of solar facilities to study actual data, and the data continues to inform us that there isn't a negative value based on its proximity to that solar facility. This is also generally true with most of the academic studies that have looked at hedonic regression models of thousands and thousands of data points and find either extremely low levels or none at all. There's a study from the University of Rhode Island which did a study and noted that for areas defined as rural that have less than 850 people per square mile, that there was no data that would indicate a negative property adjustment. Specifically here in the Midwest, I've identified subdivisions that are going up immediately next to solar arrays that have been existed for over 5 years. So if you look just over the border in Portage, Lennar is doing a subdivision. Those homes are selling for up to $450,000. And the homes that are selling are right against the solar array. There is no screening at all between the homes themselves and the solar arrays, and they're selling like hotcakes. So they aren't causing new development to deter by the fact that they exist at all. And we see no discounts for any of the homes that back up immediately to solar compared with any of the other homes that are selling in the subdivision. We continue to look at it. We will continue to look at it. I can understand individuals who don't like something. I can get that. But the market and the actual transactions aren't indicating any kind of discount whatsoever.
Okay. And you were sworn in, right?
Yes, I raised my hand and said I did.
Yeah, I thought you did. I just want to be sure.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
I have just a question for him. With like the home appraisals, you're saying that it's not going to be affected. So right down the street we have Bull Vale. There's plenty of areas there's lots for sale. So that's not gonna impact Bull Valley's property value? I wouldn't think they'd be looking at, because that's a high-end neighborhood. Bull Valley, it would affect home prices in a negative way.
Well, that's a comment. You can make your comments later.
Oh, well, so I'm asking him if he doesn't think it's gonna affect the.
Yeah, okay, now he can answer your question.
He said he was going to agree.
Again, there's no negative data that I've seen based on review of academic studies that are out there, or the dozens and dozens of solar facilities that I've studied, and looking at target and control areas, and looking at the statistics because of them. There's nothing that said that any of that, if it's right next to it, or if it's a mile down the road. No adjustments or discounts for the fact that this property may be developed with a solar park.
What about tax assessors? Are they seeing an impact?
So one of the other things that we've done and is noted in our report is that we contact county assessors and brokers who are familiar with sales of these kinds of transactions. None of the county assessors that we've discussed with is in the state of Illinois or in other states that have experience with looking at transactions of solar facilities immediately sales of homes that are immediately next to solar facilities have told us that there's any negative trend. Not only that, nobody has approached them to lower their taxes because they now live next to a solar farm.
And again, all of that's in the report that's part of the submission.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the staff report now.
Okay, so the subject property is zoned A1 Agricultural District. It is surrounded almost completely by the village of Prairie Grove, with the exception of one property to the northwest that is also zoned A1 Agricultural. Surrounding land uses are also agricultural in all directions other than the residential uses that were mentioned to the south. The future land use designation is for residential at this property. I did go out to the site. I did not see anything that would show that there would be any kind of hindrance from traffic. I looked, took photos in both directions there, and then took a photo of the farm field across the street. I believe that all of the state standards have been met as far as the minimum setbacks, height restrictions, and separation from adjacent residences. Just to kind of touch on the pollinator maintenance that I know was brought up, I did want to mention that that county staff does do annual inspections. We have a water resources consultant who is meticulous at making sure that these species are cared for properly, that they, if there's invasive species, that they're taken out. We would be there on an annual basis to make sure everything's growing properly. If things are dead, they have to be replaced. So it isn't just left alone for 30, 40 years. We would definitely be out there making sure that it is maintained. I believe that's all I had.
Does anyone have any questions for staff?
I do.
Yes, go ahead.
Mary Donner. Have we received any objections from Prairie Grove or Bull Valley concerning this?
I have not heard it from any municipalities.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just a couple of questions. As I understand it, and as I see it, would you agree that their request is in compliance with all of the standards and conditions that are imposed by Public Act 102-1123?
Yes, I do.
And that their request is in compliance and consistent with our zoning ordinances to the extent that our zoning ordinances are consistent with that Public Act?
Yes, I do.
And that the request is consistent or complies with all of the conditions that are otherwise imposed by state and federal statutes?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
My questions for Kim, and I might be better for the voting meeting, but I remember in the past we have put conditions on initially when we had like solar panels that were up against an area that had remnant oak trees, and we made sure that they had proper fencing and everything, and so that there would be no kind of, any kind of groundwork done in that area of oak trees. Do you remember what those conditions were? That was before the state act. We had some conditions like that before
I
we.
honestly don't recall what that language was like for those.
I remember we had language because we were, you know, it was so concerning what went on with the oak trees.
And kind of jumping ahead, if you do propose any conditions, I'm told that we can go ahead and propose them, but they probably will need to be run by our state's attorney's office to make sure that it is not additional regulation beyond what the state would allow for. So it is possible that even if you put a condition on, it could be retracted before it goes to the county board, but you certainly have the right to put on a condition that you feel is appropriate.
Okay. And can you look up that language before we do the conditions on what Ms. Beverly did with us?
I actually gave it to Mr.
Yeah,
Schnabel.
I'll offer that condition.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, great. All right, so at this time, we will go to comments by members of the public. So again, if you'd like, you have 3 minutes. If you'd like to give comments regarding this petition, you have the opportunity to do so. Again, your name and address, and go ahead. So either of you gentlemen want to speak?
Make it official now. So again, Todd Bright, and I live at 4063 Ames Road, directly across the street from the facility. Not opposed to it, but you know, it will have an impact on us. And I just want to also add that I'm a registered professional civil engineer. And again, like I said, Kimberly Horn does a nice job. So I seem to do everything above the board here. Again, the 2 concerns I have is I just want to, you know, maintain the charm of our, you know, Prairie Grove. I mean, that's why I moved there. There's been movies filmed along there, so, and appreciate your efforts to try to do that. Again, protect my property value. I mean, I think enough was said on that. Would you rather look at 100 acres of a solar farm or a cornfield? We're all smart enough to figure that one out. And then again, just really the only thing I would really like to see that would, you know, I would completely support it is if those power lines could get under. I mean, we deal with it on roadway projects all the time. ComEd's first choice, because it costs them $2 million a mile, is to stay up overhead. They're unsightly. That's why we want them underground. So that's my request there. And again, I should have probably asked this as a question, is with the Unified Development Ordinance, you know, that 165630, they're supposed to put the power lines, you know, for these solar facilities underground to the maximum extent possible. And it's on page 6 of your packet. It's noted in there as 2B. Again, you know, and I appreciate if we can just continue to work together. You know, Village Property owner, a good person, hope they stay there, and you've been a very good firm or, you know, agency to deal with. So hope we can keep those lines of communication. It doesn't end here. Thank you very much.
Would you like to come?
No.
Do you have a closing statement, sir?
No, thank you.
So at this time, we will move to the voting portion of the meeting. Again, this is petition 2024-014, request for a conditional use permit to allow for commercial solar energy facility, and the address is 3916 Ames Road, Crystal Lake, Illinois, consisting of 70.935 acres, approximately 3,300 feet east of the intersection of South Illinois Route 31 and Ames Road in Nunde Township, Illinois.
Leanne, did you want to mention that there's 6 members?
Oh, good point, thank you. We only have 6 people here today, and you know, you're entitled to 7 for 7 votes. Are you comfortable going ahead with 6?
We are comfortable today.
Okay. Sorry for that, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
So we have some proposed conditions from staff. Number 1, the conditional use shall have no time limit unless the use is abandoned, as specified in 16.56.030.pp.4 of the McHenry County Unified Development Ordinance. Number 2, site development shall be in substantial conformance with the zoning site plan and concept landscape plan prepared by Kimley Horn, dated April 9th, 2024. That would be yesterday's updated site plan. Number 3, the decommissioning plan shall be applicable in part as well as in whole. If any portion of the commercial solar energy facility ceases to perform its intended function for more than 12 consecutive months, that portion of the facility shall be decommissioned in compliance with all the terms of the decommissioning plan. Number 4, a McHenry County stormwater management permit shall be secured prior to construction. Any damaged drainage tile shall be repaired at the expense of the petitioner and in a manner satisfactory to the Water Resources Division Manager. Number 5, a detailed landscape plan illustrating compliance with required landscape screening standards shall be approved by the zoning enforcement officer prior to issuance of construction/building permit. Number 6, fencing shall be provided in compliance with the National Electrical Code as applicable. The use of barbed wire is prohibited. Setting fence posts in concrete is prohibited except for gate posts and where otherwise required for stability. Number 7, recommendations made by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources in their November 20, 2023 letter to the applicant with regard to protected resources in the vicinity of the project location shall be followed. Number 8, all requirements in the McHenry County Unified Development Ordinance 16.56.030.pp as amended, subject to State of Illinois Public Act 102-1123 and Public Act 103-0580 shall be met or exceeded unless specifically amended by this conditional use permit. Number 9, all other federal, state, and local laws shall be met. Are there any other proposed conditions?
Yes, Ms. Chairman, I would like to propose an amended condition number 5 on behalf of our member, Ms. Beverly, who cannot be here today at the request of staff. Minor modification, but we would propose after the detailed landscape plan illustrating compliance with required landscape screening standards that and IDNR pollinator scorecard standards and land management practices shall be approved by the zoning enforcement officer prior to the issue of construction building permit. May I pass this over to you with the wording, please?
Is there a second?
Second.
A discussion, Mr. Schnabel.
This has been of extreme importance to members of this board that the proper pollinators, the best pollinators can be used on the project, and we just seek that additional level of assurance in an attempt to try to get that accomplished. There are no guarantees in life, but that's what we're seeking to do, and therefore that language has been offered.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Yes.
Mr. Kernick?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so that condition is changed. Any other proposed conditions?
I have one, at the risk of being shot down. I would propose that the petitioner work with Conservation District and professional arborists to determine preservation of the old oak grove in the northwest corner of the site.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion, Ms. Gardner.
I just feel that even though this may not get past the state's attorney, I think it's worth adding here just to make sure that this is looked at again and again and again if necessary, but it's something worth preserving in my opinion.
Is there any other discussion?
I would just like to add, there's nothing wrong with making that request that I can see.
You're not the state's attorney.
No, I'm not the state's attorney. That is correct.
My comments is I don't think it goes far enough. I mean, under our ordinance, under site design, it says a facility shall be situated as to minimize impact to woodlands, savannas, wetlands, drainage tiles. And And we've heard before the impact to oak trees, around oak trees even, if you're not removing them, the huge impact it would have. And and everyone would have this in their packet, the Soil and Water Conservation District report. It shows a map of the remnant oak woodland study, and you can see that it clearly encroaches into this area that they are still using for panels. And so I would just like there to be no encroachment into that woodland, would be my preference. Well, and that would be a question for Kim. Say we propose that and state's attorney said you can't go that far. Could we come back and say something less than that, that there has to be a perimeter of so much around every remnant oak?
I mean, the county board can make modifications to conditions on the board floor if needed. They can also send it back to the zoning board if they feel that's appropriate. But I don't think as a matter of standard procedure that it would come back or that you can give an alternate condition. I believe you can propose as many as you want and then they will have to just assess it from that point. We could put both of those conditions on, and then if they want to strike one, they can, I suppose.
Oh,
But
sure. Okay.
Who first have to vote on mine?
Yes, so any other discussion on Ms. Gardner's motion? All right.
Yes, actually, I just want to add that with your proposal, it would kind of take care of Linnea's issues as well, because you're going to have the IDNR and the people who know what they're doing around oak savannas and such making that decision. So if we go with your request and Linnea is okay with that, I think that would be okay. Because it's going to cover as much as I think you can cover without starting to.
Then we'd have to tweak the wording a little bit to say that they have to follow the advice of those groups.
Well,
they
and that
should
might be
anyway.
pushing it too far.
yeah, I'm afraid that your original is about as far as I think.
I was trying to
we can
pussyfoot
get-
up to it.
that we can get away with, frankly. Linnea, I like what you have to say, but I think that it does not comply with the state law.
And that people don't understand what an oak grove is. If you go down to Medina Country Club, they have all these beautiful oak groves along there, and they're losing them. Because if you have a stand that's 100 years old, when the stand starts to go, all of them go. So it's a very unique situation that you run into. So having the IDNR and the arborists look at it and check and make sure we've done our job to make sure that it's looked at and done. It's their job to make sure that it's taken care of, and it's their job to cooperate. And I think that they have shown so far in what they've done that they have cooperated as much as you can.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, this is on Ms. Gardner's motion. I will call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Yes.
Mr. Kernick?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so that's approved 6-0. And I would like to move condition number 11 would be that there would be no construction of panels in the woodland area where there are mature oak trees. And if I have a second, I would discuss that.
I'll second it.
So the reason I'm proposing this is that the petitioner themselves said it would have no impact, that they could still finish their project, so this does not inhibit that from happening. In our ordinance, it's clear that that we want to minimize impacts to woodlands. It's clear, and our county is really trying to protect these remnant oak woodlands. And it's not like to me, it's not like farmland. You know, when a solar farm is done, you pull out the panels, you can return it back to farmland. You can't return remnant oak woodlands. I mean, once that's destroyed, it's not going to come back. And there's just so few of that. I think it's just really important that we protect that. And if the state's attorney says no, we go back to the other one. But I think we have to the greatest extent possible, try and protect those remnant oak woodlands. So I would ask for any other discussion.
Well, I'll second it.
Oh, I had a
It's
discussion,
already been
Mr.
seconded.
Kernick.
Yeah, it's been seconded. As I said, I just think that it is well beyond what we have the authority to do. And I support what you're trying to do, Linnea, but I think that I'm going to vote no because I think that it is well beyond our authority.
My comment is, if it's beyond our authority, I think the state's attorney's office would take the necessary action. And I concur in the chair's views and comments about the necessity of and the advisability of the condition that she suggests.
Is there any other discussion?
I agree with that. I think, you throw two of them out there, they're gonna look pretty closely at that oak grove, so I don't think that's a bad thing at all, even if one or both are taken off. You guys know, we're very concerned.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge?
No.
Ms. Gartner?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
No.
Mr. Kernick?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so this is 4-2 votes, so
That's no recommendation.
that's no recommendation, right? Correct, on a condition, or is it a simple majority? On a,
That's a really good question on a condition.
Well, it passed, basically.
We'll just say it's,
It-
it had a 4-2 vote.
Well, you might
And the
have to.
state's attorney's going to review it, tell us whether
I
it
will
exists or
double check,
not.
but I believe the lack of 5 votes is only relevant on the recommendation itself.
That's what I'm.
So I believe it is, but I will verify that before we write up the final ordinance for the county board.
Okay. So at this time, I would take a motion.
I move acceptance of a petition subject to the,
No, the conditions first.
oh, the condition first. I move acceptance of the conditions as approved,
Do we have-
Second.
as presented, as amended. I'll get it right sooner or later.
And I'll amend it and say second, whatever you said.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Donner?
Yes.
Mr. Kernick?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so the conditions are approved 6-0. At this time, I would entertain a motion for the conditional use request.
I move acceptance of the petition subject to the conditions.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Gardner. Discussion, Mr. Eldridge.
Yes, well, let me say first, I think that this petitioner is very professional and has proven herself at this and other petitions as responsive as anyone that's ever come before us to the needs and requests of adjacent landowners. But we are also constrained by the Illinois statute, which basically requires us to vote in favor if the state's minimum standards have been met. And I think there's no question that in fact they have been met by this petitioner. So I will support the petition.
Ms. Donner?
I will be supporting a petition.
Ms. Gardner?
I agree with Mr. Eldridge, and in addition, our standards have also been met, I believe. And this was a good presentation. I believe that this petitioner is very willing to work to be a good neighbor to the residents around there, because that is always the big concern. not how much electricity is coming out of there, but, who has to live by it? That's always the big concern, and I get that. So I'll be in favor of it.
Mr. Schnabel.
I agree with all that's been said so far.
Mr. Kernick.
So do I.
Okay, and I agree with the comments of my colleagues. I'm in favor, so I'll call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge.
Yes.
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel.
Yes.
Ms. Donner.
Yes.
Mr. Kernick.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so this goes to the county board with a 6-0 recommendation for approval. At this time, the hearing's closed. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, go back to your